It's incredibly hard for me to share this here, but I have nowhere else to turn. This is my story. It's a story of a cruel betrayal by my unfaithful husband. And now I'm going to tell you exactly how it happened. In my line of work, facts are the only currency that matters. I am a corporate litigator. My days are spent dissecting contracts, finding loopholes in agreements, and ensuring that my clients are protected from liability. I live in a world of black and white, of plaintiff and defendant, of breach and compliance. But marriage isn't a contract you can redline. It's a leap of faith. And for 10 years, I believed I had landed on solid ground. My life was a brochure for the American dream. I was 34, a junior partner at a prestigious firm in downtown Chicago. My husband, Mark, was a senior back-end developer for a rising fintech startup. We had a colonial-style house in Evanston with a wraparound porch, a golden retriever named Buster, and the center of our universe, our 7-year-old son, Leo. Leo was the perfect mix of us. He had Mark's unruly, sandy hair and his analytical mind. He was already obsessed with how things worked. But he had my eyes and my stubbornness. Our routine was a well-oiled machine. Coffee at 6:30 a.m., Mark dropped Leo at school, I picked him up. Friday nights were pizza nights. Sundays were for the park. It was predictable. It was safe. It was happy. Or so I thought. The shift didn't happen overnight. It wasn't an earthquake, it was erosion. It was the slow, imperceptible wearing away of the intimacy that held us together. It started with the phone. Mark had always been a tech guy. He lived on his devices. But there had always been an unspoken rule: no phones at the dinner table. Then, about 6 months ago, the rule began to bend. "Just a quick Slack from the PM," he'd mutter, tapping away while Leo tried to tell him about his Lego fortress. "Chloe, put it away," I'd say, keeping my voice light. "Chloe, the server migration is a nightmare. If I don't answer, the whole build fails." It sounded reasonable. That's the thing about lies. They often dress themselves in the clothes of reason. As a lawyer, I should have known to look closer at the evidence, but as a wife, I accepted the hearsay. Then came the physical distance. A hand pulled away too quickly. A kiss that landed on the cheek instead of the lips. The way he would turn his back to me in bed, mumbling about being too wired from coding to sleep. I told myself it was just a phase. Startups are grueling. He was stressed. I was busy with the Henderson merger. We were just two ships passing in the night, trying to keep the fleet afloat. I didn't know then that he was already building a life raft for one. The first real crack appeared on a Tuesday in October. It was Leo's parent-teacher conference. Mark had put it in his Google Calendar. I had reminded him that morning. 4 p.m., Mark, don't be late. Mrs. Gable wants to talk about Leo's reading level. "I'll be there, Chloe, promise." At 4 p.m., I was sitting in the small chairs outside the classroom. At 4:10 p.m., I texted him, "Where are you?" At 4:20 p.m., Mrs. Gable called me in. I sat alone, nodding politely as she praised Leo's vocabulary, my phone burning a hole in my pocket. When I walked out at 4:45 p.m., there was still no sign of him. No text, no call. I drove home, anger simmering in my gut. It wasn't just that he missed the meeting, it was the lack of respect. He rolled in at 8:30. The smell of the house, dinner I had kept warm and then thrown away, hung heavy in the air. "Oh my God, Chloe," he dropped his bag. He looked frantic. "I am so sorry. The encryption key on the new update failed. It was all hands on deck. I lost track of time. My phone died." He looked genuinely contrite. His hair was messy, his eyes bloodshot. "I couldn't find a charger?" I asked, crossing my arms. I was in cross-examination mode. In a software company office, there wasn't a single USB-C cable? "I was in the server room, Chloe. I didn't think about charging my phone. I thought about saving the company's data." He threw his hands up, instantly pivoting to defense. "Why do you always assume the worst? Do you think I wanted to miss Leo's conference?" He made me feel small. He made me feel like a nag. I needed you there, Mark. He sighed, walking over and wrapping his arms around me. He smelled of office coffee and something else, something faint. Vanilla? No, probably just the air freshener in his Uber. I know, he whispered into my hair. I'll make it up to you. I promise. Things will calm down after this launch. I let myself relax into his hug. I wanted to believe him. The alternative was too terrifying to consider. But that night, while he showered, I saw his phone on the nightstand. It was charging. The screen lit up with a notification. It wasn't a text. It was a push notification from an app I didn't recognize, a secure messaging app called Signal. Notification hidden. Mark had never used Signal before. We used iMessage. His team used Slack. Why did he need an encrypted messaging app? The lawyer and me woke up. The wife went to sleep. The next 2 weeks, I stopped asking questions and started observing. I noticed the patterns. The late nights. Working late became the new normal, Tuesdays and Thursdays specifically. He said they were sprint planning nights, but when I asked specific questions about the project, his answers were vague. Mark used to bore me to tears with details about API integrations. Now he offered nothing. The phone guarding. He took his phone everywhere. To the bathroom, to the garage to get a soda. He started placing it face down on every surface. He changed his passcode. I saw him type it in once, 6 digits instead of 4. The mood swings. He was irritable with Leo. When Leo asked him to play Minecraft, he would snap. Not now, Leo, Daddy has a headache. Then 10 minutes later, he would be checking his phone and smiling, a small, private smile that vanished the moment he looked at me. I tried to talk to my best friend, Jessica, about it over lunch. Maybe he's planning a surprise party, Jessica suggested, twirling her pasta. Or maybe he's just really stressed. You know how guys get, they shut down. He downloaded Signal, Jess, I said, sipping my iced tea. Jessica paused. Okay, that's interesting, but maybe it's for work security. Clients? He works in fintech, not the CIA. Chloe, are you sure you're not over-analyzing? You deal with liars all day at work. Maybe you're bringing that home. I wanted her to be right. God, I wanted her to be right. Maybe I am just paranoid. Maybe I'm the villain here, suffocating him with my suspicions. But then came the credit card bill. We had a joint account for household expenses and separate personal accounts, but we shared a travel rewards card for vacations. I logged in to check our points balance for a potential Christmas trip to Aspen. There was a charge. Uber ride. 11:42 p.m., Tuesday. Origin, downtown office. Destination, the W Hotel, Lakeshore Drive. My heart stopped. The W Hotel was nowhere near our house. It was nowhere near his office. I sat in my office chair, the glow of the monitor illuminating my trembling hands. I printed the statement. That evening, Mark came home early for once. He was in a good mood, whistling as he opened a bottle of wine. Hey, babe, he said, pouring 2 glasses. Launch is finally stabilizing. I think the worst is over. I looked at him. He looked handsome, familiar, the man I had vowed to love in sickness and in health. Mark, I said, my voice steady, why did you take an Uber to the W Hotel last Tuesday at midnight? The whistling stopped. He froze, the wine bottle hovering over the glass. For a split second, a micro-expression that would have been invisible to anyone but a trained observer, I saw panic, pure, unadulterated panic. Then the mask slid back into place. The W? He frowned, feigning confusion. Oh, right, we had a client meeting there. The investors from New York were staying there. My boss, Dave, made us go for drinks to celebrate the beta release. I took an Uber there, had a drink, and then Ubered home. Why? He laughed, a nervous, hollow sound. You checking up on me, counselor? It was on the joint card statement. You usually use your corporate card. Must have pulled the wrong one out of my wallet. My bad. I'll transfer the money back. He took a sip of wine. Geez, Chloe, you looked like you were about to serve me a subpoena. His explanation was plausible. It was smooth. It covered the facts. But my gut was screaming. Investors don't meet at midnight on a Tuesday. Mark hates hotel bars. And Dave, his boss, had posted photos on Facebook from a fishing trip in Montana that entire week. I smiled. It was the smile I used when I knew the opposing counsel was lying, and I was just waiting for the right moment to destroy them. Okay, I said, taking the wine glass he offered. I didn't drink it. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Mark snored beside me. The presumption of innocence was gone. We were now in the discovery phase, and I was going to burn his alibi to the ground.
If you want to catch a liar, you don't ask them questions, you let them talk, and you watch what they don't say. But more importantly, you follow the data. People lie. Data doesn't. Mark was a developer. He was smart. He knew how to cover his digital tracks, or so he thought. He assumed I was just a lawyer who still printed out emails to read them. He underestimated me. He forgot that I spent my days dissecting corporate fraud, working alongside forensic accountants and digital security experts. The morning after the W Hotel lie, I called in a favor. Benny was a private investigator my firm used for high-stakes divorce cases and background checks. He was expensive, discreet, and terrifyingly efficient. I need a forensic image of a laptop, Benny, I said, meeting him in a crowded coffee shop far from my office, and a timeline on a cell phone. Benny looked at me over his sunglasses. He didn't ask who the target was. He knew. He had seen the look in my eyes before. It was the look of a woman who was about to torch her own life to find the truth. Is it a company device? Benny asked. No, our home desktop. He syncs his phone backups there. He thinks deleting the thread on his phone deletes it everywhere, but the cloud is forever, isn't it? If he has backup enabled, yes. What are we looking for? An app called Signal and a location history. I gave Benny the login credentials for our home network. Mark had set the password to his birthday plus Leo's birthday. Lazy security for a tech guy. While Benny worked on the digital front, I started the physical surveillance. I told Mark I had a late deposition on Thursday. Instead, I parked my Volvo 3 blocks away from his office building in a spot with a clear view of the exit. I wore a baseball cap and sunglasses. I felt ridiculous. I felt like a stalker. I felt like I was betraying 10 years of marriage. But he betrayed it first, a voice in my head whispered. At 5:30 p.m., the employees started filing out. I saw Mark. He wasn't alone. He was walking with a woman. She was young, maybe 26, blonde, petite, wearing a short skirt and a leather jacket. She wasn't just a colleague. You don't laugh like that with a colleague. You don't lean so close that your shoulders brush with every step. They didn't get into an Uber. They walked to a parking garage. I waited. 5 minutes later, Mark's Audi pulled out. She was in the passenger seat. I followed them. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel so bad I thought I might crash. I kept a 2-car distance. Don't get too close. Don't lose them. They drove to a trendy Italian restaurant in the West Loop. Not the W Hotel this time. A new place. I parked across the street and watched. They sat by the window. I saw Mark order wine. I saw him reach across the table and take her hand. He stroked her knuckles with his thumb, a gesture he used to do to me when we were dating. I took out my phone and snapped a photo. It was blurry, but identifiable. Exhibit A. I didn't storm in. I didn't slash his tires. I sat in my car and vomited into a Starbucks cup I had in the cup holder. Then I wiped my mouth, reapplied my lipstick, and drove home. When Mark came home at 10 p.m. smelling of garlic and expensive red wine, he found me on the couch reading a book. "Hey babe," he said, too cheerful. "Crazy night. The API integration is a mess." "Did you eat?" I asked, not looking up. "Yeah, we ordered pizza to the office. Greasy stuff. I feel gross." "Liar. You had osso buco. I saw the menu." "Go shower. You smell like work." Chapter 5. The Smoking Gun. 2 days later, Benny emailed me. Subject line, report_completed.pdf. I opened it in my office with the door locked. It was worse than I thought. It wasn't just a fling. It wasn't a mistake. It was a second life. Her name was Sarah. She was the new UI/UX designer at his company, 24 years old. The signal logs were a transcript of betrayal. "Sarah, October 12th. I miss you. It's boring here without you. Mark, October 12th. Be there soon. Can't wait to taste you. Sarah, October 14th. Does she suspect anything? Mark, October 14th. No, she's too busy with her cases. She barely looks at me anyway." I stopped reading. The words blurred. She barely looks at me anyway. I looked at him every day. I looked at him with love. I folded his laundry. I made sure the fridge was stocked with his favorite IPA. I planned his mother's birthday party. And he was telling this child that I barely looked at him? I scrolled down. Photos. Selfies in bed. In our bed? No, thank God. In a hotel room. Then the financial trail. Expensive dinners. Jewelry. A Tiffany necklace purchased 3 weeks ago. I remembered seeing a Tiffany charge and thinking he bought it for me for our upcoming anniversary. It never appeared. Now I knew whose neck it was around. And then the kicker, the text that turned my sadness into cold, hard steel. "Mark, yesterday. I'm talking to a lawyer next week. I need to figure out how to protect my equity in the startup before I drop the bomb. I don't want her taking half. Sarah, yesterday. Just make sure you get custody of Leo. You're the better parent anyway. Mark, yesterday. I know. She works too much. Leo deserves better." The sound that escaped my throat was primal. It was a growl. He wasn't just cheating, he was plotting. He was planning to blindside me, hide his assets, and take my son. He was going to use my career, the career that paid our mortgage while his startup was just an idea in a garage, against me. She works too much. I stood up. I walked to the window of my office and looked down at the tiny cars below. "Okay, Mark, you want a war. You have no idea who you just declared war on."
He thought he was the better parent. He thought he could outsmart a litigator in her own arena. I wiped a single tear from my cheek. It would be the last one I shed for him. I needed to act fast, but I couldn't let him know I knew. Not yet. If he knew I was onto him, he would start hiding assets even better. He would scrub his devices. He would coach Sarah. I needed to secure my position. I spent the next week moving quietly. I opened a separate bank account in my name only. I gathered all financial documents, tax returns, deed to the house, his stock option agreements. I scanned them and stored them on an encrypted drive. I met with the senior partner at my firm, David Stern. "David, I need to retain you," I said. David looked at me confused. "For a client?" "For me. I'm divorcing Mark." David's eyebrows shot up. He knew Mark, he liked Mark, but David was a shark, and he was my shark. "I'm sorry, Chloe, whatever you need, we'll waive the retainer." "I don't need sympathy, David. I need a scorched earth strategy. He's planning to come after custody and hide assets." David's expression hardened. "Then we bury him." The plan was simple. Catch him in the act, undeniably, and serve him the papers in a way that would rattle him so hard he'd make mistakes. I chose the date, November 15th, his startup's big launch party. He invited me, of course. "You have to come, Chloe. It's going to be huge. Investors, press."
I wouldn't miss it for the world, I had said. The night of the party, I dressed like a weapon. A black dress that fit like a second skin, stilettos that could puncture a lung, and red lipstick. Mark looked nervous as he fixed his tie in the mirror. "You look, wow," he said. "Thanks, I want to make a good impression on your team." We arrived at the venue, a swanky loft in downtown. The music was loud, the champagne was flowing. I saw her immediately. Sarah. She was wearing the Tiffany necklace. It took every ounce of self-control not to walk over and rip it off her neck. Mark was working the room, shaking hands, playing the brilliant CTO. I played the supportive wife. I smiled. I laughed at bad jokes. Then, halfway through the night, Mark whispered to me, "I have to go do a press interview in the VIP room. I'll be back in 20. "Go get 'em, Tiger," I said. I watched him walk away. I watched Sarah slip away 2 minutes later, heading in the same direction. I waited 5 minutes. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Benny. Now. Benny was outside with a process server. I walked toward the VIP room. The door was slightly ajar. I could hear giggling. I pushed the door open. They weren't doing an interview. They were on the leather couch. Mark's shirt was unbuttoned. Sarah's hands were in his hair. They froze. Mark scrambled up, his face draining of color. "Chloe, it's not—" I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I pulled out my phone and snapped a clear, high-resolution photo of them disheveled and guilty. "Smile," I said. "Chloe, wait, let me explain," Mark stammered, buttoning his shirt with shaking fingers. Sarah was cowering behind him, looking terrified. "There's nothing to explain, Mark. The picture says 1,000 words." Behind me, the door opened again. A large man in a cheap suit walked in. The process server. "Mark Sterling?" he asked. "What? Yes?" Mark looked wildly between me and the man. The man handed him a thick envelope. "You've been served." Mark looked at the papers. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." You served me at my launch party?" he whispered, looking at me with horror. I stepped closer, invading his personal space. I smelled her cheap perfume on him. "You wanted to drop the bomb, Mark?" I said, my voice low and lethal. Boom! I turned on my heel and walked out. I walked through the party, grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, downed it in one gulp, and left. The war had officially begun. The morning after the party, the house was silent. Mark hadn't come home. I sat at the kitchen island drinking black coffee. Leo was eating his cereal, blissfully unaware that his world had detonated 12 hours ago. "Where's Dad?" Leo asked, kicking his legs under the chair. "He promised to take me to the robot museum today." My heart clenched. The first casualty of war is innocence. "Daddy had to work late, sweetie," I said, smoothing his hair. "But I'm taking you. And we're getting ice cream after." "Yes," Leo cheered. Mark didn't call until noon. I let it go to voicemail. Then he texted, "We need to talk. I'm coming over to get my stuff." I texted back, "The locks have been changed. Your clothes are in boxes in the garage. The code to the garage is 0000. Do not attempt to enter the main house. If you do, I will call the police." It was harsh. It was necessary. When he arrived an hour later, I watched from the upstairs window. He looked wrecked. He punched the code into the garage keypad aggressively. He loaded the boxes into his Audi. Sarah was waiting in the passenger seat. He looked up at the window. He knew I was there. He gave me a pure hatred. It wasn't the look of a man who was sorry. It was the look of a man who had been outplayed. The legal proceedings moved fast. David, my lawyer, was brilliant. We filed for temporary sole custody based on Mark's erratic behavior and adulterous conduct in professional settings. Mark lawyered up. He hired Rick Salinger, a notorious father's rights attorney known for playing dirty. The first mediation session was a bloodbath. We sat in a conference room with a long mahogany table separating us. Mark wouldn't look at me. Salinger did the talking. "My client rejects the proposal for sole custody," Salinger said, leaning back in his chair. "He is a devoted father. The fact that his marriage failed has no bearing on his parenting ability." "He missed parent-teacher conferences," David countered calmly. "He was absent for weeks at a time, and he exposed his son to a chaotic environment." "He was working to build a future for his family," Salinger shouted, "and now Miss Sterling wants to punish him for his success. We are countersuing for full custody. We believe Miss Sterling's demanding career makes her unfit to be the primary caregiver." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Unfit?" "Excuse me?" I said, breaking my silence. "I have been the one picking him up every day. I make his lunches. I know the names of his friends. Mark doesn't even know his pediatrician's name." Mark finally looked at me. His eyes were cold. "You're never home, Chloe. You're always billing hours. Leo tells me he misses you all the time. Sarah is great with kids. She has a lot of free time. She can give him the attention he needs." The audacity! He was suggesting his mistress, the woman he had known for 2 months, was a better mother figure than me. I stood up. "If you think I will let that woman within 10 feet of my son, you are delusional." "Sit down, Chloe," David whispered, putting a hand on my arm. "Don't give them a reaction." I sat, but I was shaking. Mark smirked. It was a tiny, triumphant smirk. He knew he had hit a nerve. He was using Leo as a weapon to hurt me.
The next few weeks were a nightmare. Salinger launched a smear campaign. They subpoenaed my work records to prove I worked 80-hour weeks. I didn't, but billable hours can look misleading. They dug up a medical record from 5 years ago when I saw a therapist for mild anxiety after my mother died. They tried to paint me as an unstable, workaholic, absentee mother. It was working. The court-appointed mediator seemed sympathetic to Mark's plight. After all, he was the successful tech genius who just made a mistake. I began to doubt myself. Am I a bad mother? Did I drive him away? Is Leo better off with a stay-at-home stepmom? One evening, Leo came home from a weekend visit with Mark. He was quiet. "Did you have fun?" I asked, making him dinner. "Yeah. Sarah bought me a PS5, Leo mumbled. "That's nice." Buying his love. "Mom?" Leo looked up from his plate. "Why did you kick Daddy out?" I froze. "What?" "Daddy said you kicked him out because you care more about your job than us. He said you're angry and that's why we can't be a family." The rage I felt in that moment was white hot. It was nuclear. Mark wasn't just fighting me in court, he was poisoning my son against me. He was rewriting history to make himself the victim. I walked into the living room and called David. "Take the gloves off," I said. "I want to use the signal logs, all of them." "Chloe, are you sure? It's going to be ugly. It's going to be public." He told my 7-year-old son that I chose my job over him. I don't care about ugly anymore. I want to destroy his credibility. I want the judge to see exactly who he is. We went to court. No more mediation. I took the stand. Salinger grilled me for 2 hours about my work schedule, my stress, my cold demeanor. I stayed calm. I answered with facts. Then it was Mark's turn. David stood up. He looked like a predator. "Mr. Sterling," David began, "you claim you are the primary caregiver and that Miss Sterling is neglectful. Is that correct?" "Yes," Mark said confidently. "And you claim that your relationship with Miss Sarah Jenkins is a stable, nurturing environment for your son." "Yes, we are very happy." "Mr. Sterling, do you recognize this document?" David handed him a piece of paper. Mark looked at it. He paled. "It's a printout of a message thread from the app Signal, dated October 14th. David read aloud. "Mark, I just need to get custody so I don't have to pay child support. Once the divorce is final, I'll hire a nanny. I can't deal with a kid 24/7. It cramps our style."
The courtroom went silent. Even the stenographer stopped typing. Mark looked at his lawyer. Salinger had his face in his hands. David continued reading. Sarah, I know. Kids are so annoying. Just get the money, babe. We can send him to boarding school next year. I looked at the judge. Her face was stone. I knew that look. It was the look of a woman who had just decided the fate of a man. Is this your writing, Mr. Sterling? David asked. It was taken out of context, Mark stammered. I was venting. It was a joke. A joke about sending your 7-year-old to boarding school so he doesn't cramp your style? David asked. A joke about using custody to evade child support? I love my son, Mark shouted, standing up. This is illegal. She hacked my phone. Actually, David said coolly, the device was community property backed up to a shared home server, admissible evidence. The judge banged her gavel. Sit down, Mr. Sterling. Mark sat. He looked small. He looked defeated. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear, real fear. He realized that his Better Parent Act had just been exposed as a fraud. He didn't want Leo, he wanted to win, and he had just lost everything.
The fallout from the signal logs was swifter than any of us anticipated. The judge didn't just frown upon Mark's messages, she saw them as a blueprint for premeditated emotional and financial abuse. The tech genius facade was gone. A week after the court hearing, Mark was asked to take a leave of absence from his startup. The board of directors didn't care about his personal life until his personal life threatened their public image. A CTO who joked about using child custody to evade financial obligations was a liability they couldn't afford. Sarah left him 48 hours after he lost his job. I found out through Jessica, who still kept an eye on social media. She deleted every photo of him, Jess told me over the phone. Apparently, living his best life didn't include a man with a mounting legal bill and no equity. Mark tried to call me one night, sounding drunk and desperate. You destroyed me, Chloe, he slurred into the receiver. You took my son, my job, my reputation. Are you happy now? I looked at Leo, who was asleep on the couch with a book on his chest. No, Mark, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. You destroyed yourself. I just documented it. Don't call this number again unless it's through your attorney. I hung up. I didn't feel the rush of victory I expected. I just felt a profound sense of relief, like a fever had finally broken. The final divorce decree was signed in a quiet office on a rainy Tuesday. No drama, no shouting, just the scratching of pens on expensive bond paper. I got the house. I got primary physical custody of Leo. I got a significant portion of the startup equity he had tried so hard to hide. But more importantly, I got my name back, Chloe Sterling, not Mrs. Mark Sterling, not the workaholic wife, just me. As we walked out of the courthouse, David put a hand on my shoulder. You fought a good fight, Chloe. Most people would have folded under that kind of pressure. I had a good teacher, David. The law doesn't care about feelings, David. It cares about the truth. I just had to make sure the truth was loud enough to be heard. The first few months were the hardest. The house felt too big and too quiet. Every time I saw a pair of Mark's old socks in the laundry or found a stray charging cable, a wave of grief would wash over me. I wasn't grieving for the man he was. I was grieving for the man I thought he was. But then the small joys started to fill the gaps. I started leaving work at 5 p.m. The firm didn't collapse. My billable hours dropped, but my quality of life skyrocketed. I learned that junior partner was just a title, but mom was a legacy. I took Leo to the robot museum. We stayed for 4 hours. No one checked their phone. No one complained about being wired. We just built a solar-powered car and ate overpriced hot dogs. Mom, Leo said as we walked to the car. Yeah, honey? I like it better this way, just us. I stopped in my tracks. You do? Yeah, you're here. You're actually here. I knelt down and hugged him so tight I thought he might pop. He was right. I had been there physically for years, but my mind had always been in a courtroom or a deposition. Mark's betrayal had been the catalyst that forced me to reclaim my own life. A year later, I'm sitting on my wraparound porch watching the sunset. Buster is at my feet, graying slightly around the muzzle, but happy. Inside, I can hear Leo laughing at a cartoon. I have a new job. I left the high-pressure world of corporate litigation and opened a small boutique firm specializing in, ironically, family law. I use my shark skills to protect people who are in the position I was in. I help them find their voice when they feel silenced by betrayal. Mark is in another state now. He has supervised visitation once a month. He's working for a mid-level firm, his genius status tarnished. He sends the checks on time because he knows I'll be on him like a hawk if he doesn't. I am not the same woman who stood in that VIP room with a camera. That woman was fueled by rage. This woman is fueled by peace. Sometimes at night, I look at the photos Benny took, the evidence. I keep them in a locked folder on my computer. Not to dwell on the past, but as a reminder that I am strong, a reminder that I am capable, a reminder that a happy ending doesn't always mean a marriage that lasts forever. Sometimes a happy ending is just the courage to walk away and start over. I take a sip of my wine, the good kind, the kind I bought for myself. The air is cool, the house is warm, and for the first time in my life, the verdict is unanimous. I am free.
Thanks for watching to the end. I'm sure you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe to the channel. Click on the next video mine on your screen. You'll definitely like it. Bye-bye.